because we have a wonderful guest today. Kay Sine is a gal that not only has personal experience in buying condos, but she just loves to share her know-how with anyone who's willing to listen, and she's with us today. Kay Sine, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you, Donna, very much. It's a privilege to be here.
Now, you're the founder of a successful condominium management company, which I found interesting, and you have become quite the authority on community association living. You talk at real estate conferences, and you are an advisor to condominium association boards of directors and property managers. So you really, you know your stuff. And this is something that I think is so important. I have known people through the years that have just loved living in a condo, others that have hated it. I've known people that have gone in thinking they've got one kind of an agreement, and they find it's not so. So I am really looking forward to talking with you about this. Now, how did this all evolve for you? Because this is a very personal story. This is how you open your book. This is why you wrote the book. Tell us your story of how you got into this area of expertise.
Well, I moved into a condo. My husband and I were downsizing. Our children we had two left at home. They were teenagers. And we thought we'd try a condo. So we found one we loved, and we moved into it. An hour after we moved in, I got a call from the condo board president telling me that we could not park cars in our driveway.
That's 1 hour after you move in.
Right.
That must have been a very exciting experience.
Well, it was horrible because we had 4 cars. My 2 kids had a car, each had a car, and we had each a car. And we had a driveway, double width driveway and double car garage, and that just didn't make any sense at all. And plus, there was no extra guest parking anywhere on the property. So my children ended up having to park off the property, and that was very bad when they had to come home after a part-time job in the evening.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it was very bad. So from that, I ended up getting onto the board of directors, getting elected to the board of directors, so that I could see what could be done.
And that was the beginning of a business. And this was in 1997 that this evolved?
No, this was back in 1987.
1987?
When we bought that condo, yes.
Okay. And then you went into your own company in 97.
Correct. I had started managing condos part-time in the late 80s. And so in 97, I formally incorporated Lake Management, Inc. And so it's now in its second generation.
Now in its second generation. All right, here you had your very first experience with a condo, and it brings to my mind something that a friend of mine, her sister, bought into a condo. Her sister is in her 80s and very good health, and she bought a condo in this wonderful little community, and after she got into it, she didn't realize, one, she couldn't do things in the yard outside, that was not her right or privilege. She couldn't put in certain plants. 2, there was no parking allowed on the street. Now, she did have a good parking area, but just like what you said, everything had to be parked inside. And she is sort of happy with where she is, but I think if she knew what she knows now, she would not have purchased this particular place.
All right.
But she's made some adaptations. So let's talk about what people need to be aware of when they're getting ready to buy a condo, because you hear so many promotions on television about buying into communities, buying into condos, townhouses in these communities, and like I said, I've known some people that have just loved it and others that have just detested it, could hardly wait to sell what they had purchased to get out of it so that they wouldn't have to have the restrictions. And there's differences in the way condos are presented, all kinds of things. So this book, I think, is a must-read. Let's talk about legal documents, because one of the statements you made is that you didn't realize that you had moved into a police state. That's a horrible thing to say. That's an awful thing to say. But I know what you're talking about. I know what you're talking about. So let's talk about those legal documents that people get.
Okay. The reason that I didn't realize I had moved into a police state is because I never received any of these governing documents.
Oh, my goodness.
We bought our condo from an estate sale, and we never even we didn't even know the thing existed. When that board president called me about the parking, she said, I said, how can this be? And she said, well, it's in the declaration. I said, what's the declaration? So that's a problem, because sometimes sometimes people don't get the documents. So there are documents that need to be reviewed. They are the declaration, the bylaws, the rules, the financial documents, insurance. There are so many documents that really should be reviewed. And I'm convinced that condos are a fabulous place to live, but the buyer needs to make sure that he's matching his lifestyle with the style of a particular condominium association.
Okay, people get these documents. They're all excited about what they're getting. Would you recommend that they have someone sit down with them and go through it? Because some of you're going to get a stack of documents, the do's, the don'ts, the whereases, the where-nots, and all this kind of thing. And people are often so excited. Now, can you ask for a copy of those documents prior to looking at purchasing one?
Absolutely. Your realtor should be able to give you those documents.
Okay. So, go ahead.
Or the management company, or the county. You know, there are at least 4 different places to get those documents.
Now, how can someone choose if they've got a particular lifestyle? Because there are organizations and there are organizations. Mm-hmm. When you choose to get into them, of course, the price range is just across the board, depending on what area of the country you live in, etc. What should people be aware of? From your personal experience, what should they really be looking at relative to their lifestyle? What kinds of questions should they ask themselves?
Well, they should ask about pets, whether or not pets are permitted, and if there are any weight or size restrictions. They should ask if they have a home-based business. They should ask if they're allowed to run that business from that condominium unit.
Now, that's a very important point, especially with so many people having home businesses.
Correct. I know of several people that moved in, did not know they could not run a business from their unit, and so they either had to sell their unit or give up their business. And that's disastrous when you're in, just been in a couple of months. Financially, that's disastrous. I know one person that couldn't do that very quickly, and she ended up having to run her business out of her friend's house until she could get her unit sold.
Oh, for heaven's sake. So we have that. You have the aspects, like you said, about pets.
Also leasing. Ask whether or not you can lease your unit.
Now, that's a very important one, because sometimes people, I know of a young woman who found she got a job that took her overseas, and so she wanted to be able to lease. And in her case, she was able to do that. They allowed her to do it. She was able to lease her condo while she was out of the country.
Right.
And it was a win-win for her, because that covered her payment, and she didn't have to worry about utilities or anything else. Everything was just all taken care of. And she also had a management company that made sure that the checks went into the bank and all that kind of good stuff. So that worked out for her. But in many instances, they don't want you to lease your place.
Right.
So that is very, very good.